can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Micah Mitchell of Memberium. And Micah, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. I just want to give a big shout to Dobbin Buck of Get You Wired, who introduced us. Actually, Mike and I think, had dinner maybe, 8 years ago with Kim Walsh-Phillips, Sean Buck at the Traffic and Conversion Conference. But Dobbin Buck interview was great. He's really a knowledgeable guy and some interesting thoughts on cultural leadership. Another one, since this is part of the SaaS series, Wade Foster was a good one, who co-founder of Zapier. That was a really good episode. Also, Jason Vanderboom, who founded ActiveCampaign, and Micah and Memberium do work on the ActiveCampaign for membership. So we'll talk a little about that. And many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability to the strategy and the full execution. So we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host, so they can create amazing relationships and great content, and then most importantly, run their business. Now, if it's an automated membership site on Memberium, maybe they have a little more time than usual. But for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. So I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Micah Mitchell. He's co-founder of Memberium. It started back in 2014. They provide the software solution to help you build an automated membership site that is deeply integrated with your CRM. By the way, this is without custom coding or expensive developers. They've done work with Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Tyler Garnes, digital marketer, John Asseroff, probably half the cast if you've seen The Secret, Hay House Publishing, and many more. He's actually trained thousands of business owners on membership site strategy, and his company really prides itself on over-the-top support and advanced functionality to help people get stuff done online. It kind of, one of your first clients, I don't know if it's the first, but John Asseroff, I think, going back, basically, you could tell the story, but you just said, we'll move you, and then just did it, right? And it's not a typical for a software company.
Yeah, definitely not. So when we got started, John needed the software really bad. And, he's got tens of thousands of people coming through there every day. So my partner and I, who developed Memberium, he's the developer, coder, David Bullock, we stayed up all through one night, basically doing a hot swap on the back end of the membership system on a live site and made it, totally seamless and switched him over. And John, we've both known him a long time. He's a good friend. And so we wanted to do that, for him to help him out because he was mid-launch and having issues with his other system. But to be honest, it was a little bit like, well, we'd love to have him as a star client,
Well, with that type of thing, there's always just a pain in switching. And when you take, you just are the easy button for that, it just, why not? You know what I mean? Early on, we'll just start off with, not everyone knows what Memberium is or does. Just talk a little bit about Memberium. And as we're doing that, I'm going to share my screen. There's a video piece if you're listening to the audio only, and we're going to check out Micah's site.
Yeah, so Memberium is a plugin for WordPress. WordPress is a website building system, a content management system. So basically, you have your content management system or your website, and then you have your CRM, which is where your customer data lives. And Memberium links those two together. So it's basically able to say, hey, you have paid, therefore you get access to this area of the website, or you haven't paid, we should try to sell you access to this area of the website. So it's pretty much membership control, but it's not like a standalone system. It's middleware between WordPress websites and a few of the popular CRMs, Keep and ActiveCampaign.
And we'll talk about some of the use cases you can see here. Obviously, course creators, authors, service businesses, internal training. Talk about the evolution a little bit. Like right now, it's over a decade old. Talk about the start of it, and then we can walk through a little bit of some of those, the evolution and steps along the way.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was kind of funny because people just needed basic protection, really. You could do fancier things, but it wasn't like everybody was doing it. You just needed to put your content behind a paywall, be sure that the right people were getting access and the other people weren't. And then the evolution has kind of been toward more and more community features, and then more and more gamification and learning management. So for example, progress bars, check marks, percent complete, completion goals where you might earn a badge or some points. So the user experience has gotten better in terms of the way they consume content. And instead of just going and finding like a 2-hour video recording that they're going to consume, that 2 hours is broken down into, let's say, 20 small chunks, right? And they're all labeled and chaptered. And so people have gone a long way toward taking the content or the ideas that they were delivering and making that user experience gamified. And like I said, the community piece as well, where more and more those groups weren't just about buying the course, but about interacting with other people who are along the same journey. And kind of where it's at today is, the content itself, the gamification, the community, and then a lot of people are also deploying it on mobile, right? They're doing live events, they're doing coaching, they're doing online events. And so the membership site becomes this control hub where you're saying, okay, you got to log in to get to the online event. Even at a live event, you might log in to get the resources for the event and the replays of the events afterward and so on. So that's where it's at today, where people are more wanting to integrate this, where, for example, if somebody completes a course and they earn a badge, it prompts them to go celebrate that course completion in the community with other members to encourage the other members to continue, or it prompts them to go put that badge on their website or their resume or wherever, as kind of word of mouth branding and so on. So that's kind of where I see it is. It used to be just content protection, and now it's really about experience control as well as content protection, and trying to deliver, I think, from a content perspective, a peer-to-peer perspective with community, and then even a coaching perspective where maybe the leader of the site has some way to either group coach the people together or individually on like a VIP basis, coach some of the people who are willing to pay a little more. So I know that was a mouthful. I hope that's all right.
No, that's perfect. It's funny you say that because I join things like that. Like if there's a digital course or learning, I'll join also because of the community. Like oftentimes there's a Slack community or Facebook community, and sometimes I'm like, great, content's great, but actually I'm paying you because I would love to be in a like-minded group of people. So for me, that's like, you've heard of it like direct response. Sometimes the bullets is why people buy, just like some feature. And that for me, just what you said is I may buy just for that alone.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like often the content is great, but the content's only from one perspective or context. And then you go into the community and you're like, hey, how are you implementing this thing that we all learned together? And what about you? And they're like, well, I found it was a little bit too much for me, so I scaled it down this way. And you're like, oh, that would work perfect for me. So the community is huge.
Talk about, gamification. I think many business, no matter what business you're in, it could be online, offline, you can always incorporate different elements of gamification. What have you seen some of the cool things? You have a unique perspective. You've seen thousands and thousands of these. What are some of the cool things people are doing with gamification? You mentioned badges. What are some other things people do to gamify?
Yeah. So let me share kind of a little story, first of all, that's kind of funny. So one of my friends, he's a case study on the site, and kind of an interesting story there with him, but he he talks about, for example, how he added gamification. It's Tyler Garnes. And he told people right up front, hey, these points don't mean anything. There may be no prizes basically, but people still worked for the points. They still wanted to be on the leaderboard, be recognized, maybe for their own sake, maybe for the, whatever public recognition. So first of all, there's something about gamification that's just a little strange. My kids use the app Duolingo some of the time to learn another language, and it's so gamified, right? It hooks them. They have streaks. They're competing against other people. There's leaderboards. It'll be time for bed, and they'll be like arguing, fighting to get their phone to go do Duolingo because they're on a streak and they don't want to mess up their streak. And it's like, well, how did this app get kids to want to learn a foreign language to that level, right? And it's gamification. So inside content, a good example is Digital Marketer, who we have with us, where they'd been teaching and just were such experts that they had this library of knowledge. But you know what it's like to walk into a library. It's kind of like, wow, it's kind of overwhelming. And so they took their library of knowledge and turned it into a variety of certifications. And so instead of like, here's a training on email marketing, here's a training on paid ads, they said, here's an email marketing certification, here's a paid ad certification. And then later they went further. Here's a Google ad certification, a Facebook ad certification. And there being a goal to consuming the content of becoming certified is kind of gamifying it, right? There's something you win. Two, along the way for that certification to happen, they are pausing and quizzing and asking questions, making sure the person is understanding what they're consuming. And then part of the gamification to me is even just a simple progress bar. If you're going through a 4-video series, every time you complete a video, the percent should jump up, the progress bar should move. Points, maybe you get 10 points because you watched the video, or a bonus 50 points because you just hit your 5th day in a row, right? The more people do that stuff, and it's not hard now. It used to be, when I was first being asked to do this, it was custom programming that stuff. And so people, they really wanted it because they spent money to make it happen. Now it's actually so easy. It's almost like, why would you not do that? Systems like LearnDash is one you can check out that Memberium works really well with. I know the founder. He actually sold that company, but anyways,
who started LearnDash?
What was the question?
Who started LearnDash?
Justin Fairman.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely heard of it.
Yeah, they're cool because they kind of pioneered this online, content consumption gamification craze. They were pioneering a lot of the quizzing and stuff like that. They had universities using their software early on because of the online testing capabilities. But I could probably go on and on about it. What I will say is, so there's the certification is kind of a high level, and you can also just do badges. So you don't even have to go as far as, hey, let's do a certification, but you can just have a fun little design made up. And every time they do something, give them a badge of some sort. For those familiar with Khan Academy, it's another thing that my kids have used over the years. And I remember my oldest, when he first got on it, he just became obsessed with earning these badges, earn all these different badges, right? And I thought I was going to have to push him to consume the content, but
like now he's graduated from college and he's 10.
No,
I was kidding.
I wish. No, not quite. But it was just cool to see, right? And all of us adults are just little kids. So, I'm giving these as examples of little kids to say, if it can get somebody who, isn't normally incentivized to do these things, to do them for the sake of a pointless badge, the feeling I get, I guess, that they feel from earning those things, it's pretty cool. And then one of my friends, Mike Weiss, talks about the social viral loop, where when you get a badge, have that auto shared with other people who are at the same part in the course, right? Because if I'm, let's say, taking a course on how to build out a perfect webinar, and I'm constantly hearing about how my peers are like, hey, I just did my first webinar. It was awesome. I just finished my slides. I just recorded my draft, whatever it is. Oh, sorry, I've got an alarm going off. That definitely helps the other members see that it's possible. If they can do it, I can do it. It kind of makes it
kind of incorporates gamification and the content and community all in one.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are some platforms that do this in an all-in-one sense, SaaS, true SaaS platforms, but you give up some control to achieve that. What a lot of people are doing with Memberium, for example, is they want all that, but they want to really finely tune it. They have certain fun little things in their community, let's say that they've maybe done offline that they want to move online, and it's a little quirky, what you can do in person versus now you're in these technologies that have limits. So Memberium kind of takes those limits away, which is why I think a lot of people move to it, because I'll be upfront, it's not necessarily easy. We're always trying to make it easier to use, but it just has the functionality they need.
What are some interesting things, Micah, from a offline to online? You mentioned some of the things people are doing. I don't know if you got a big influx, I imagine, during the COVID years when people were forced to go online, but some unique things that you've seen, or not unique, what people are doing to add value to their clients' community from offline to online.
Yeah. There's so many people, right, who, when COVID happened, were forced to make that switch or go out of business. One of the case studies on there, my friend John from London, he talks about that. They were an events only. They were just selling events, and they were selling the events from the previous event, right? They have an event of some sort. They sell those people into the next event, plus some others and whatnot. So what I'm saying is the event was his delivery mechanism. It was his sales mechanism. It was like his whole business, And they pivoted that into Zoom. And I guess lucky for them, their audience was also on Zoom with nowhere to go. And honestly, a lot of people had somewhat smooth transitions when they didn't overcomplicate it, when they just said, okay, we were doing that, let's move it to Zoom and try as hard as we can to do the same thing. Because I think there was a lot of uncertainty at the time. And so if they could provide continuity, people were into that. I guess in his case, he stands out to me because, like I said, he basically didn't have anything online. He had like an order taking website, and now he's got this robust membership site, and they hardly do any events anymore. So it's not like when events became available again, he had to go back offline. He's like, why would I? Right.
How did he create continuity? So they were going event to event. Then how did he shift the model so it's now continuity as opposed to just selling the next event?
Yeah. So all of the event recordings he has in there, and he did kind of what we're talking about, where he did a good job of getting them sorted into the right topics so that somebody who has whichever need doesn't have to spend forever, right? They can just find their spot. One kind of fascinating thing, this is kind of a sidebar that I remembered about his site that I thought was interesting, is when you log in, it starts a 20-minute timer and then it automatically logs you out. And he basically said, because it's financial education, and he's really clear about his market. He's saying these aren't professional day traders. These people have a primary income from somewhere else, and they're doing some trading on the side. And therefore, I don't want them over consuming. I don't want them sitting on here looking at stock charts all day. It's actually bad for them, right? I want them to come in, learn.
It's like what I do with my kid's iPad. It's like, if you're consuming more than 30 minutes, it's going to shut off.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because it's almost like a little bit of gamification to his membership site.
It's like a scarcity. Like you're like, oh God, I got to get this done, or you can't mess around.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought that was just I'd never seen it before, but just such a unique idea. And it's one of those things they were doing at their events where they would get the people in a room, give them a bunch of data to analyze, set a timer, right? And he would talk about that, like, hey, if you sit in this too long, you can only consume so much. You make the right decision. If you keep consuming, you're going to start second guessing and get lost, et cetera. And so I just thought that was such a unit. And it's like big in the upper right corner of the membership site. When you come in, it's like clock's ticking. Pay attention,
I have found sites like Eventbrite and some other sites will also put a clock on me. And I'm like, I know that they're not going to shut it off, but I'm still like looking at the clock countdown. And so psychologically, even though I know that, I'm still like, okay, I got to get this done. So it's interesting. But I love what you're saying about gamification. I made a bunch of notes, and I love the certification and badges stuff. And I just remember, it's just a universal principle. Like I remember I was using Fitbit. I don't use it anymore, but when I had the community feature and I saw like someone leap ahead of me in the leaderboard, I think one night it was like midnight and I'm like hopping on the elliptical, like, why am I doing this? It's because someone just hopped ahead of me and I need to get the last steps in at like 11:59 for the day. So it definitely, my competitive nature came out. So I love that, the gamification, the community. I know you talk about 4 stages in the
Yeah.
model. Can you break that down?
Yeah. I've been doing live events teaching membership sites. And the main problem I noticed from, let's say, my presenter perspective is that people are just getting ahead of themselves. They come in saying, I'm at a membership site event. It's time to get going. And they're like, I want to be the Tony Robbins of sewing. I need a $2,500 program and a live event in Fiji. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, that's what Tony does, And they just try to transfer something they've seen, especially from stage, somebody shiny who they want to be like, understandable. And so the 4 stages is kind of to help them say or realize, okay, that perfect, great, big vision, love it. Well, here's where you're at today and some of the actions you can take now to kind of get on the road versus that feeling of overwhelm. I got to write my book. I got to, et cetera, et cetera. So the 4 stages, in simple terms, stage 1 is when you have 1 digit of members. So basically between 0 and 9. And your focus is on building. So instead of dreaming, for example, instead of trying to plan out your mastermind group or your product ladder of all the things somebody could buy in the future, no, you're just building an MVP. In stage 1, and this is why I tell people, hey, this if you have 1 digit of members, how many members do you have? Well, none now, but I'm going to have millions, right? And it's like, well, okay, but how many do you have? You're in stage 1, okay? And so that pushes them to build a product, test a product. And until you can get more than 10 users, meaning you're typically signing them up one-on-one, they might be people you might be doing Zoom calls or something. That's all you do. And so it's kind of like you make a small product, you really talk to people to try to sell it so that you have a quick feedback loop. And that's stage 1 is about speed. You're just trying to get out of stage 1, create some product that a couple people like enough to give you a couple bucks for. Once you're into the 2 digits, okay, I got at least 10 members. Stage 2 is all about sales. So most people would think, oh, product improvement. You got 10 members, it's proven, let's improve. And no. 10 doesn't prove anything. You need to go sell till you get at least 100. Typically, this means you switch the way you're selling from Zoom and phone to something online, maybe if you have access to stages or webinars or podcasts, right? One-to-many sales, basically. And so the idea is, okay, you could sell it one-on-one to people, great. At least you passed that hurdle. Now let's get you over 100 members using leveraged sales or one-to-many sales, because frankly, if you can't get over 100 members, the economics of the business probably fail. It's not worth putting in all the hours to make a course to sell to 20 people. You'd make a little bit of money, but it's difficult to create like good course level content, So I tell people, look, stage 2 is about sales. That's all you do. And most membership site creators, course creators, authors, speakers, they don't want to do that. They want to gamify. They want to add a community. They want to build a mobile app, right? Because they're in their mind, if they have all these features, people would just buy it. No problem. And I'm saying, no. You actually have to do sales. You have to write copy, test, whatever, get above 100 members. Once you're above 99 members to 100, now you have 3 digits, stage 3. Now it's all about retention. And this is where it's fun. Yeah, go gamify. Go do the live event to get your members together. Virtual event online, great, but maybe even in person, bite the bullet, invest some money, get them together. All those things where you're building a community, you are focusing on improving your products. You might go refilm some of the videos in that first product that got you to where you are, now that you've had some feedback and know more and have a little bit of money because of the 100 members. So it's kind of this, self-funding, lean startup methodology as well, where, okay, finally stage 3, you get to retain. And the beauty is, because you have that leveraged sales system into place, it keeps feeding what you're building up retention in. Again, that's stage 3 to 999 members. Then once you hit 1,000 and go into stage 4 is all about ascension. So this is where you do start a mastermind. You do start gold, silver, bronze, whatever you want to call that, VIP elite kind of stuff. because now you have a big enough pool of paying customers, even if they're only paying you a little bit, to say, hey, if 1% of you join my mastermind for $1,000 a month, I've got 10 people, you know? You don't need big conversion percentages to launch new products and make them profitable. And so now you head into Ascension knowing that I already solved retention. That's not a problem. That's solid. I have my leverage sales. And not that you can't go back to the previous stages and continue to iterate and work on them, but that's kind of the 4 stages in a nutshell. And I'll give you an example or two of where people screw this up. Hey, I have 9 members. Let me launch a community. Well, no one's there to interact with. I have 20 members. Let me launch Mastermind. Well, even if you get a high percentage of those 20 members, it's not enough people to be in a, to make those economics work out. But if you do follow this model, and I've Dobbin, who you mentioned, he's told me that they have this printed out and taped to the sides of the monitors of all of his project managers, because this is where all of their clients were having trouble. And I went and kind of taught their company this, and they were like, oh, that would be useful. And I found it useful in talking to a client, because at least the client can see now, okay, there's a real number. Do I have more than, what number of digits of members do I have? Where am I? So I hope that all makes sense. Short version.
Yeah, I love that. I want to talk about the retention piece in a second. So don't let me forget, because you've been doing this for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that your company has done from a retention standpoint. But you said something about the sewing for Tony Robbins, and I thought you've probably seen so many unique ways people have made money, and maybe shockingly. So what are some of the niches that you've seen that I love getting the creative juices flowing throughout, people creating membership sites for whatever?
Yeah. So the one that comes to mind immediately that I always thought, like, how is there so much money here? Because when I was doing a lot of this, I was also working on their CRM. So I saw all of their data, right? And it was bird tricks. So basically a membership site just to teach people to teach their pet bird tricks. And he was making like $500,000 a year off of bird tricks, and this is a few years ago. I think it's probably less likely to do that now. But when these sites were new, that was one that I'm just like, I would have never thought anybody would pay a dime for that, and he's just killing it. Let's see, what are some other kind of funny ones? There's been a lot of woo-woo kind of sites, right? There's been a lot of, and by that,
what is that, like reading horoscopes, or what?
People have a following for whatever reason, and ton of respect to them and their following, like whatever they're into. But I'll look at something and just not understand it at all, right? And I'm thinking, is this a real business owner, or is this a wannabe? And then I realize, oh, they've got like 10,000 people in their community actively singing their praises. I don't get it, but somebody does. There's a market here. There's been a lot of church groups that will use it. We've had a lot of sports and some interesting ones there where they have a physical facility, and then they'll rig up cameras all over their facility, and then they'll start basically streaming their facility. It takes them a minute to mic up their instructors and things like that, but there's been some very successful businesses doing that. And those are always fun, because
that's really bridging the online and offline. That's a cool use case.
Yeah. And those people are just so passionate. Like, I love, sports and all that. And so seeing them, what's cool about it too, is they have students in the class, right? It's not just them and a camera. The social proof of, hey, I've got a jam in live class here. It's almost like Peloton and things like that. We've had some companies incubate software. So Go Spiffy is a website. The software is called Spiffy, but it makes Spiffy order forms. And they incubated their product out of Memberium, which just means when they were getting started, they decided, hey, we don't need to figure out all the log in, log out of our software platform. We'll just use Memberium and we'll put the functionality behind it. And so that was kind of cool. And they've become, they've grown way past us.
So it helps them like avoid custom coding and things like that. And they can use you as a back end while worrying about whatever the content or whatever the creation is going to be.
Yeah, you think of any online product, you got to manage payments, you got to manage logins, right? And so people are using us for those things and putting whatever behind it because of the flexibility, I think. One thing we haven't talked about that is kind of an interesting, I think, evolution in these is the idea of group accounts or corporate accounts where you have whichever training and now somebody's not just buying a membership, but they're saying, I want 5 seats, I want 10 seats. And the advantage of having separate seats versus just sharing a login is now you have separate testing, right? And the admin who bought those 10 seats, they can actually see, hey, where is Sally? Did she do the training? Did she pass the quiz? Did she not? So there's some of that going on, and that can become pretty highly leveraged because people will sell into, I have one client, for example, who's selling a lot into Asian countries and they're buying a couple hundred seats. And he had an interesting thing he did where he made the videos. We've tried different ranges, but for example, you can only view it 5 times because otherwise he could sell them 10 seats and they would just rotate the seats and have different people use the 10 seats, right? So that's something, out of the box, no custom coding that we just wrapped in some Memberium shortcodes and said, hey, every time they watch a video, set a custom, like this particular
People
video.
will find a way around paying for a seat. So
I know. And at the end of the day, just a side note on security, I don't believe in online security, meaning no matter what you do, they can just screen grab what they're watching and share it, right? So it's almost like you're trying to deter the more honest to stay honest.
yeah. So thanks for sharing that. I love those examples. Retention.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you've done throughout the past decade? Because you've had customers for probably 10 plus years at this point.
Yeah. And what's kind of funny to me, a little bit nerdy, but they're on the same subscription from 10 years ago, meaning they didn't even move plans. Like it's the same like thing that happened 10 years ago. And that is just billing all the way through, right? Never even talked to some of them. And I'm saying that in a good way, meaning they didn't need help, hopefully, right? If they did, we'd help them. But doing some live events. So our first live event I actually did out in your area in Chicago because I had a friend / client out there with a space. And that just, I had been to some of my clients' live events before, but when I made myself do a live event, it was kind of a leap of faith. It was scary, the whole time. I'm like, I'm never doing this again leading up to it, right? This is the worst. Why did I do this? And, just the stress and anxiety, but having people come together and then meet with one another. And out of that first live event, we also, I basically kind of last minute on good advice of a different client decided to make that live event a certification event. And so they all came and they did the event. And basically the only difference with it being a certification event is I said, hey, anybody wants to stay longer and take a test and become certified, you can do that for free here only, basically, right? Because it was a first time thing. And I made the test up like on the plane ride out and like the night before and different things, just putting down questions. So it wasn't like, it didn't take a lot of time and energy. And sometimes it's great that circumstances force you because otherwise I would have probably overthought it. So that though, it brought in these partners. And for example, we have certified partners now for, I forget when that first event was, probably 8 years now. We've had these same partners who, because they were there, they met each other, they met me, they met the other people in person, right? Hand to hand, face to face. There's a totally different bond. So it may not be I'm talking about all this online stuff, but I'll say taking online to offline definitely creates a much stronger bond. And then those same people online are your biggest advocates and supporters and social proof, for the other people online who you may not get a chance to meet. So I feel like that is a big deal. We've always gone just over the top on support. So I don't think anybody's ever left us because of a lack of support in any way, shape, or form. What we normally get is people saying, we reach out to you instead of the other products because we know you'll help us with those other products faster than they will. It's not even our product, but we'll do it. And that I think builds a lot of trust and a lot of longevity because they know that when, especially these clients, when it's really important, like let's say mid-launch and you need help, you really want that support to be there. You don't want to call and talk to a bot and be pushed off or wait 24 hours for a response to your ticket, you know?
Talk about the partnerships for a second. And I know a lot of people really grow through partnerships, very leveraged. What have you incorporated in your partnership program that's been helpful?
Yeah, so partnerships are kind of the core, I feel, of our marketing strategy. The term we use is sell the sellers. So there's layers to it. I mentioned certified partners. We also have, there you go, agency partners up at the top. They're kind of a higher level partner, and then down the page is the certified partners. We have referral partners, normal affiliates, and then we have
Dobbin.
yeah, um, and then we have our I would say strategic partners. So my mentor, I've been doing monthly calls with for now about the same 10 years. He's always told me, take your top whatever partners and just always be there for them. So Keep, for example, I will do everything I can to sponsor any event they have, to support whatever they're trying to do. Right. And same thing for Active Campaign. When they did their first event, we bought up every sponsorship they would let us. We'll sponsor every meal, we'll sponsor the bags, so that's in terms of partnership. Just the purpose of that, by the way, is just to be there when they think, hey, we have this idea. Who could we kick it around with? Hey, Memberium, these guys are supportive. Let's talk to them, right? So I would say the strategic partners is a big part of it. And then, plus this that you were just hovered on there, they're a perfect example of, we look at everybody in our ecosystem as strategic partners. And so we've done a lot of webinars and work with Plus This over the years, where we're trying to say, hey, who is a mutual client who uses both of our products? Let's get them on and do a case study and talk about how do they use them together in combination to make things better. And our user base is kind of more tech savvy, and so they're okay using multiple products and integrating them. And when they do, they get these cool results, right? They get these really complex, awesome automations. With these partners here, so these are mostly our certified partners, but I'd say it's a lot more than just certified partners, meaning that, when I go to these events, I hang out with these people. We go to dinner, we'll shut things down, just kind of hanging out. And we're such goofy, introverted nerds that we get together in person and we're not doing much, but we're all enjoying it. And after all these years, I think just looking at these people on here, it's like, I know, all these people are diehards. I've known them for a long time. So, I think the offline has probably been one of the best things we've done for our partner category. Keep, for example, 2 months ago, I went down and I bought their customer service team lunch, like 60 people, had food catered in, and taught them during lunch about Memberium at my expense, all of it. It's a great opportunity for me, right? But that's an example of, hey, we'd be happy to come and teach your customer service team about Memberium so that when people are trying to buy or get help with your product and we can be part of that equation, you're aware of it, right? So those are just a couple examples. But yeah, to me, I don't want to be running around on stages all over and spending $1 million on ads. Not that I'm against those activities by themselves, but I love having a big partner ecosystem where if I want to do something, I can reach out to them and get support and get access to their list and their resources and that sort of thing. And I don't take that lightly. I don't use it often, but it's there when I need it.
I feel like, Mike, in that example with Keep or Active Campaign, you also make their software stickier and you help with retention, because if they're making money using that, they're also probably less likely to switch that. Like, well, we already have Memberium, it's already integrated with our Keep, got to keep it. We got to, so I feel like there's a symbiotic relationship there.
Yeah, for sure. My mentor calls it a sucker fish relationship. He's like, you're just cleaning up all the stuff on the outside of the big fish, and they're happy to have you and you're happy to be there.
At what point, because I always early on we talked about this before we hit record, pigeonholed you as functioning and helping with a WordPress site that uses Keep. But at what point did you start working in the ActiveCampaign ecosystem too?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date. It's probably something I should figure out. But
no, and dates I don't care about. It's just interesting because I'm sure it takes a lot of coding time, energy. It's not so easy. You can't flip a switch and like, okay, we're going to start integrating and helping people on Keep. I mean, on ActiveCampaign.
Yeah, so Keep was really dominant for a long time. And then we started having this, for a long time, we had just nobody leaving us. Like for the first year, I don't think we had anybody cancel at all even, right? And we're thinking based on SaaS metrics, we're killing it. Part of it was just Keep was doing really well. We're in this nice growing market. And at some point, as we were losing customers and pulling them on the way out, exit survey, where are you going? Oh, well, why are you canceling Memberium? Because we're canceling Keep. That was the main reason. Okay, well, within the canceling Keep reason, what's the main reason people are canceling? They're moving to ActiveCampaign. So we basically found this is happening. If we don't have some way for them to stay with us, they're leaving us for no reason, meaning these people were saying, hey, if you worked with anything else, I'd do it. I love Memberium, et cetera, was a lot of the positive feedback there. So you're right. It wasn't a small consideration because, especially in my mind at the time, that was one of our best points was we worked only with Keep. So when people worked with us, we didn't have any frills. We didn't have any extra load on your server, nothing. It was as streamlined as it could be, which is why these, million plus member sites were there. So when we went to ActiveCampaign, it was very different. We saw that, okay, this is happening. People are going there, but it's a different kind of tool. It's a totally different paradigm. Keep is all in one as much as possible, right? An ActiveCampaign was, no, we just want to be excellent at the campaigns and the emails and the deliverability. And I think that's why people were going there, right? But then they had to say, well, what am I going to use for my shopping cart now? Because Keep was the shopping cart. What am I going to use for affiliates? Because Keep was the affiliates. So it was a little bit different. Today, we have something called Memberium Pay that we built into Memberium because there is no built-in shopping cart to ActiveCampaign. And it's kind of a simplified, payment processor, but it was a need that we built there. So
yeah, with ActiveCampaign came other things you needed to develop because it wasn't as much of an all-in-one solution.
Exactly. Yeah. And it took us a while to learn, well, what are people naturally buying? What do they want us to provide or expect us to provide versus not, And that was one of them that was just kind of a low-hanging fruit where, yeah, if we give them basic payment processing, then they just need Memberium and ActiveCampaign and they can run.
And that's when David started to hate you because you sold more ActiveCampaigns, which meant more development that he had to do. But, how did that, and we have to talk about this because we talk about partnerships, certified partnerships with Memberium, but you have a very unique partnership, I think, model with your co-founder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the initiation story. I was sitting in a weird little place in Belize, of all things, and David reached out to me saying, hey, I've finished this thing. I'm calling it Memberium. And he got that name from like a domain name generator or something. And Digital Marketer, wanted to license it. And so he said, and I'm, debating between you and Digital Marketer on what to do here. And at the time I was just doing services and I wanted to get into products, have that leverage, build SaaS and whatnot, pseudo SaaS. And so I was like, hey man, don't do that. Do this with me, you'll be kind of a little fish over there, but right? And I said, and I'll, push my energy into it to grow it and make it big. And the initial contract we had together, he said, well, if we can at least make 10,000 in revenue a year, I'm happy and we can keep doing this. Right. And I was, I kind of told him we're going to do more than that. I was all enthusiastic, but he's like, no, this is great. 10,000 a year was the minimum essentially. And so I guess to back up and state how it works, it's a royalty agreement. So he built and owns the product and I have a master license and all the rights to it and pay him a royalty back. And And that's had its own challenges and its own opportunities. So, you know, obviously any siloing in the business can be a bit of a challenge. I think the opportunity actually was that because we didn't control the product, I felt we had to overdo support, meaning, you know, I might want him to make a change to make it more user friendly. He might not agree with that or have time to implement it right away or whatever. And so what's the workaround we do on the support side? You know, and so we just became very proactive, tons of workarounds, tons of videos and documentation, you know, office hours, schedule calls with us, all these things so that the product would never be a hindrance. And that, you know, I think had we had control of the product, I don't think I would have not, you know, for any lack of caring, I just wouldn't have put the same energy into support that we did. And it ended up becoming a major differentiating factor. We've looked at our all of our 5-star reviews, and there's hundreds of them, and the majority of them mention support. And so it's kind of become part of our brand semi-accidentally. You know, I kind of got off in the weeds there, but
you were saying kind of the challenges and the opportunities of this agreement, this type of agreement.
Right. So, for example, in December, I went out to his new house in Pennsylvania just to coordinate, right, to talk about ideas in the future and all of this, especially with our 10th anniversary. So we still coordinate. You know, we meet. We have a set monthly call. We pay a consultant to actually attend that call and help us coordinate and manage tasks and things. I think like I said, the advantage is each of us on the separate sides are trying to do our best in our own world, right? I guess the advantage is we stay in our lanes. The disadvantage is the siloing. And then some of the things that have come up as a result is we have a lot more robust processes for testing, for quality assurance, for support, for, you know, all the things surrounding the software. And I told the team for years, you know, we probably have the best soft skills of any software company in our space. And it became evident, like people started telling us back. But prior to that, I was telling them, you know, none of our competitors are doing this. None of them are doing that because they think they can solve the problem through the product, which maybe they can. But having him trying to solve it through the product from his paradigm and us solve it through everything else through ours, it was kind of just like extra energy, you know, going into that customer experience.
You're coming at it from kind of two different perspectives and two different angles. So it kind of adds to the solution. What does the company structure look like?
As far as like it's
like from like a team,
Oh, yeah. I've used, so Dave and I kind of do our own thing, and then we use Upwork for everyone else. And we have forever. So right now I've got my two main guys have been with me about 7 years, came in the same cohort. And we used to, about a year ago, we were bigger. We had almost 10 on the team. And seeing, you know, having dealt with the ongoing economic stuff, my mentors told me a few times, don't fight the Fed, essentially saying when they want to slow things down, they're going to slow things down eventually, right? And so seeing that happen, also seeing AI and all of those possibilities, and then also seeing where our market was, we downsized, and it hurt. It sucked. You know, I cried. These are people I'd worked with a long time and loved working with, but I was just like, yeah, this is crazy for the future of what we're doing. And what was a surprise to me, because I thought it was going to cause the rest of us to have to grind, everything got easier. Everything just became, our service is faster, like meaning by metrics, we are doing better. And
why is that?
I think it's because there was a lot of middle management discussion going on. Like my thought was always to overstaff, so our response times would always be lickety split, right? But it added this extra mid layer of complexity, which once I removed, now we're just perfectly in sync. Customers come in, like I said, the first response time is actually down. We're faster, and we're getting more reviews from people. So it was my mismanagement, you know, for sure. Excuse me. And my, pre-hiring, over-hiring, and putting too much into operations. One thing I realized, this was kind of another tidbit from a mentor, was if you want to be a growth company, you have to have at least 2/3 of the positions growth focused and 1/3 operation focused. And I was like 90% operation focused, and just taking the sales as they came in because I was lucky to be in a good market. But then I'm realizing, oh, I've just added all these redundancies and layers, and it just wasn't necessary. And I thought I was going to have to rehire and retrain some new people, which again, I'd never in this company fired anyone before. So it wasn't, it's not my normal thing, but the writing was on the wall. And I made that, I'd heard also to make it kind of deep and decisive and all those things. And so I went deep, and I did it early enough to pay everybody severance and all of that, which as Upworkers, they don't, that I treat them like employees, even though they're through Upwork. So paid them severance. And that was hard, but it was, in hindsight, I'm so glad I did it, because now looking at the cost structure and where AI is going and all the things, it's like, oh yeah, we can build a few bots to do what everybody was doing. But yeah, this, I guess where we were started is the unique kind of, partnership perspective. And what I was going to say is where Dave initially said, hey, if we get 10,000, let's keep doing this. It grew to where it consumed both of us and hired all these people, and, just took off like a rocket, basically, which we both loved. But when we first planned the partnership, we didn't anticipate this was supposed to be a side thing. And so we've gone through a couple iterations of our agreement, trying to rectify. It's almost like growth became a challenge, where it's like, oh, the financial model we used for compensation was based on not making a lot of money. Now it's going nuts, and it almost becomes a disincentive to pay too much money. There's no hunger and all these things. So it was quite the learning experience for me, being kind of naive, generally, and then not having business experience or business or entrepreneurial background or any of those things.
And on the other side of things, there is like a development team.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, he's got some people working with him and is looking for more. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm of the similar nature to you, I think, Micah, where it's kind of talking dirty to me when you talk about operations redundancy and things like that, because that's actually how I think too, because it comes in kind of really serving the customer, right? And thinking about that. So I resonate with that. I wanted you to talk about a use case. There's a very interesting use case where someone started one and actually sold it. With Tyler, I think it was. What happened there?
So Tyler Garnes built a membership site full of software training videos mostly. And he created his own methodology, which he called The Way. So it's kind of like the way to do your CRM automation with Keep. And he had an agency. So he was selling people this training. He was implementing this for people, doing live trainings with them and so on. And it's a perfect example of what the business was worth to him, what he could collect in fees in the aftermarket, right? Then Keep buying it for themselves, which they did. They bought that company from him, the membership site and the agency and everything. And now they use that same membership site that he was just selling a few courses to. They train all of their employees, all of their partners, and all of their customers with that membership site. So the payoff of that piece of intellectual property and his concept of the way, so not just the video showing the things, but the way that ties it together, because it's a complex system, they scooped up, and makes a lot more sense for them to own than for him to own. They can sell that content, they can give that content away or bundle it in to make sales, and use it obviously to train their customer base and make it more sticky. So it's a cool, success story for him, where in the case study with him, he kind of shares, when I first built the membership site, I was expecting this huge launch and to make all this money, and it didn't happen. And he said, but I sold some. And so I went and I did my other business. But he said, when I looked back over time, I realized, oh, that was the most profitable thing I'd done, because I put in that work, people came in, and it's just been automated and running. So it's often very profitable over time. And I shared with him, I had the same experience. I thought I'm going to do this giant launch. didn't work. But looking back, it's like, whoa, some of those people have been happily consuming and paying for quite a while now. I should do more of that, right? But yeah, in his case, for it to come around full circle, for him to sell it to the company that it was about just made so much sense. It made sense for him and them. And then now Keep has this awesome asset that I think is advantaged by not having been made inside the company. They had, and Tyler had worked for Keep. He knows Keep very well, but making it in the aftermarket where he didn't have to get approval for things, no politics. He just made it for the user the most useful way he could, because he had to, or they wouldn't buy it or stay. Now they have that asset. And I love that story.
Mike, I have one last question for you. And first of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your lessons, your stories. It really is fascinating. And my last question is about some of your favorite tools and software, right? You're in this space. It could be WordPress plugins. It could be software. I don't know how you run your customer support. We've talked about, Keep. We've talked about ActiveCampaign. We've talked about LearnDash. What are some of the other of your favorites that you use or know others use?
Yeah, I'll say that Keep for me was like an instant love. Long time ago. I've been using it for 18 years now, and it's got its problems, whatever. But I like the company. I like the people. But the software itself to me was just like a revelation when I first saw it. They were so far ahead of the game. And I had done enterprise CRM software when I was very young, where I had to write like curl command lines to bill the monthly billing each day and things like that. And so I see this Keep thing and I'm like, holy cow, it fits all this stuff and interrelates it. And so Keep, I would say, is the main thing. And nowadays, a lot of people do all that integrated CRM stuff, but to have I saw it and still do as almost AI, where you program it with a bunch of rules. It's taking in data, it's making decisions, right? It's a smart system. It's the brain, the hub. Zendesk for sure. We started on Zendesk. We moved, I think, to 2 other systems trying to optimize for support, and just ended up back at Zendesk because it just has everything you need, in one place. And that's something we found, back to the comment about like the 10-person team to the 2-person team. It was also that the people who we kept were so good, such A players that, somebody else before I just was throwing bodies at the issues. By having somebody really smart, they can solve it in 5 minutes. What would have taken a committee 4 hours, But Zendesk is kind of the key to that, because it's the number of things it does for us compared to other systems. And I didn't know I had it so good. When I first tried other systems and moved off, I'd move off and be like, where's this? Where's that? Oh, it doesn't exist. Oh, it's coming. It's like, no, we can't do that. LearnDash for sure. The ease that you can implement, the things we talked about, gamification, certification, quizzes, badges, all these points. And you might add add-ons to LearnDash, but it's the brain of that learning management. I was once, a friend was making fun of me once at a live event we were speaking at, and he said, Mike is the only SaaS owner / tech Luddite that I know. So I'm not like a early adopter, quick to hop on, but I have been, because I was in a coaching group, into ChatGPT for over a year now, kind of a little bit ahead of our market. Not that I was using it perfectly, but just attempting. And I'm more and more every day, not just at other tools, but just like, man, I should bounce everything I'm doing off of this. Not that I shouldn't think for myself, but using it as a brainstorming
It's great
partner.
for brainstorming. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure I could think of more, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah. Any apps on your phone? It could be productivity apps, or it could be just apps that you like.
Really big into Spotify, both for music at the gym, podcasts the rest of the time. I love workout apps. I'll tell my team all the time, like if I ask somebody a question about their fitness, it's like, oh, what app do you use? And I'll tell my team, just get yourself on an app, forget about it. Like you shouldn't be because for me, at least, I would always be thinking, what did I do before? And what should I do now? And, just so much to think about. And once I got a nap,
What do you
then
use?
all of that mental power was going into the workout.
What app? So someone recommended SmartWatt. I use that one. I also use Macros, and I also use Way of Life. So and Map My Walk. Looks like it's Under Armour. What are your favorite fitness apps?
Mostly for me, it's just around weight training, just to force me to do it, basically, because everything else I kind of do or get through playing with my kids. But Fitbot is good. Body Fit is good. Under Body Fit, there's a program called Y3T that I've done over the years, and I would say it's probably the best results from anything I've ever gotten, because and it sucks to do, but if I simply follow that, then it's like, okay, I'm in top shape and I don't have to think or do anything else 4 days a week. I got to do this thing. It's going to be horrible, but then I move on and I don't have to think again. So I love that.
I'm going to check it out. So Micah, first of all, thank you. Everyone check out Memberium.com to learn more and more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. Micah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.